Welcome back to the Fertile Dark. I'm Daniel here with my co-host Krista for part 2 of our roundtable discussion on grief and death. And if you haven't listened to the first part, we invite you to go back and listen to that to help set up the tone and the stage for what we're going to talk about here as we finish this beautiful Death Tula roundtable.
That is one thing I want to talk about. Humor. Bringing humor into the space. What I love about Ned, who is the founder of You're Gonna Die, he is just so darn funny. And I'm working on my funny bone and seeing how that will develop in the space of holding this. And because I know that I can do raw and vulnerable and deep, and I know I can do that. And I also want use some light and elevation through humor and curiosity and pointing out the absurd, because there's just so I'll tell you this short story that my dad loved when I played music, and when he was dying I was playing music for him at bedside, and he loved a song called Blue Bayou. I was playing that song and he was he was 1 foot in this world and 1 foot in another, and at some point in the song he goes, "Caitlin, that's the wrong key." I love that. I love that he could sort of joke with me in that space, and that there could be playfulness. I think playfulness is so important in grief space. It's very releasing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know that's a part of, I struggle with that in my practice too. And that's like a preparation of spiritual hygiene. And that's like one of my intentions, is to try to bring more levity into my life while engaging in this work and just in general. So like doing things like I engage in, like, I love silly videos. So again, like TikTok is my friend. My daughter is a Gen Z humorist, so she's teaching me things. I'm learning from her. But I think as a practice, I think sometimes people forget that. I think there's a lot of restraint that people feel like they're supposed to be behaving a certain way in the death space. And working in this space has helped me to realize, oh, I want to be off the chain. I want people laughing. I don't want this to be a space of, I consider myself an absurdist. Like, I do believe that this life is very absurd in a lot of ways. So it is, and it doesn't make sense. And I'm just, and we go with it. And so I really think that humor and lightness is something that you have to, like, it's a must, that you must be able to bring some sense of humor and the absurdity of it all, of this experience. Because also when you're leading, you're an example to the family, I think, of how, again, it gives freedom to the range of emotion of human expression that is available to them. And humor is an incredible resource for coping with something that is difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of room for joy in dying, and it really helps create a sense of meaning in the dying experience, when family members can come together and evoke a lot of joy or bring joy into that space. Like, it feels like the last death I attended, where I when I show up at their house, it's like I'm walking through a portal, literally, like through the front door. It's like I'm entering a death portal where, like, okay, they're in like a slightly altered universe. And in that universe, it's like a microcosm of all of the things that make us human, and humor and joy and play and lightness, and also like fear and anger and death and sadness. They're all there. And it's amazing how it can really get tapped into much quicker. Like, we can identify it much faster in that microcosm of like approaching death. And so it's funny, like how we cope within the moment can be really funny. And like recognizing that or pointing that out makes it lighter. Because it's so human. It's so human of us to try to avert, even as we're approaching it. even as we're facing it, just like, oh my gosh, look at me, trying to organize or mitigate or look away. And it's just, there are moments where you just can't help but belly laugh and you don't know what's funny. You're just all in this room and there's a person that's dying and they're laughing too. Like it shifts their expression, it shifts the energy of the house in the room. It's just like, dude, you're dying right now. And like, we're here for you and we love you. And like, it's just really hard. And also like, we're here with love and joy and it's funny and absurd and, all the things.
It reminds me of an experience I had where it was a little intense. Thankfully, it was a situation where nobody actually died, but it was one where it very easily could have been. I was on a morning run and I got hit by a car while I was running. A guy fell asleep at the wheel and drifted off the road and he tagged me at probably about 50 miles an hour. And like my elbow broke his windshield, the A-pillar hit my funny bone. Like I broke his side mirror off with my ribs. And it was I was living in the middle of nowhere and it's like right in front of this like a feedlot. So I'm running and it's gross. It's in the desert. It's hot. And I'm like 4.5 miles into my 5-mile run. And next thing you know, I like am off the ground and into the ground. And like when I realized, oh, I'm not dead. One of the things that I did pretty quick was I texted my friend who also happened to be my boss. And I was like, hey, I just got hit by a car, but it's okay because I'm basically Iron Man and I broke his car and I'm fine. and then we called another friend who happens to be a chiropractor. And he met us at the hospital. I had to get some stitches. That was like, my arm was really bruised up. My ribs were really bruised, but I just had to get stitches. That was about it. And the first thing he did was he took his phone out to make sure he could get some really good video footage of me getting all cleaned up and stitched up. And then we went to his office and he's like, well, this is the dirtiest my table has ever been. Thanks for that. And then we went over to like Walgreens so I could get all of my like pain pills. And I'm standing there in this line with all these little old ladies in front of me. And I'm still in my workout clothes. I've got my arm in a sling. I'm covered in dirt and blood. And I'm just like hanging out. And I look like a total train wreck. And they're all staring at me really awkwardly. And I just smiled. I was like, what's up? Like, hey,
Yeah.
how you doing? And just like started like making all these old ladies like laugh in the line at Walgreens. So I was like, well, what else is there to do? Like I look like a total mess.
Yeah.
And I'm not dead yet. So let's just hang out and have a good time.
Yeah.
It's like there's a real place for humor, right? Like you can laugh and it's okay. And yeah, it's like one of the best things to do is to just laugh sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah, it really feels like it moves something in the body when you laugh like that. And I was just thinking like some of the deepest laughs I've had have been during something traumatic or around grief or loss. And I think it's because it's like that energy wants to move anyway. So the break, the tension, the holding paradox, all of that is just like, like it just kind of comes out in these waves. And it's like this joyous feeling because especially in those moments, because it's this release that it just feels like needs to somatically happen. And it comes out in a way that feels more like you have a sense of stability in it instead of like this chaotic sobbing, which has its place too. But it's like laughter is almost like this light way we can let it release.
Yeah. I love that so much because I used to just chalk it up to, I'm like, oh, is it a trauma response that I always laugh in times of humor, like when it's inappropriate? And I'm like, I mean, it could be that too. Right. But I do think, like you said, the somatic aspect, it's discomfort. It has to go somewhere, and better out than in. Better than me ruminating in my brain trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. Like the release through the body is so essential to healing. And also I think it brings you back to presence and awareness. Like Dan, when you were talking about you being in line, you're like, yeah, I know how I look. I know what this looks like. I know what this must look to all of y'all right now. So, like let's enjoy the humor and the absurdity of this moment and like get on with it. But I think it brings you back to a sense of presence. And I know for me, like gratefulness, like, wow, I am still here. That was dark, but bringing it back, like I'm here. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that like humor and laughing for me really zooms me out of that really like closed in, like through a microscope view. When I'm able to see the bigger picture and like the absurdity or the humor, it's just like you get to zoom out a little bit and look at how ridiculous the circumstance might be or how absurd it might be. And I really like that sense of feeling. Like if I'm in a situation that's totally nuts and I'm thinking of one specific circumstance where I'm just like, this is so insane. And like the point of laughing about it is just like, I see how insane this is. I see how absurd this is. And it's comical that we're all here right now. And it's not specifically about death, but it allows that expansiveness. It allows, and that really brings meaning and purpose into the process of dying for me. It's like, that is what makes it meaningful. Life is also full of joy. Life is also full of laughter. And so if we can have that up to the very end, like that's a meaningful death,
Yeah.
and I want that for myself. I want laughter till the very end.
One of my favorite Memorial Day traditions has been laughing about all the ridiculous things that we experienced with guys that we've lost. Or be like, oh, do you remember that time that we totally hogtied him up in his bed and then pretended we were interrogating him by shooting him with airsoft guns from like 10 feet away? And it's like, yeah. And then it's just like, we just start laughing and have a good time. But it really, it does do something. Like there's a real moving that happens inside. Well, there are some people who actually had some specific scenarios that they shared to get your expert advice on. So I wonder if it'd be okay if we tackled some of those together.
Yes. I'm all in.
Okay, so here's our first one. So this individual has a parent who is in the process of dying. However, there's a lot of tension in that relationship where the parent isn't really willing to be vulnerable. They're not really willing to do any work around it. They don't even want to acknowledge or talk about it. But the child in this situation is really wanting to be supportive. So what recommendations or advice would you give to this person for how they can deal with that?
Well, my personal approach is that, like, what I'm hearing is that there's actually two separate things going on here. To engage and care for a dying person is separate than your longing and desire to heal. And I think so for me, I'm hearing two different things. If the intention is to show up in loving support for them dying, in their process of dying, it is not pushing them into a space of discomfort to meet your needs, to heal your relationship with them, right? Like a lot of my work as a doula is that, like, what makes them most comfortable? And whatever resistance they have is theirs. And it's not my job to push them through that discomfort to resolve whatever happened or unfolded in their life. And so that's my immediate kind of insight on that. Yeah, and it's also really difficult. A lot of being in an intimate space with families and death, these kinds of dynamics come up. And that is like helping the family member or the child work through their feelings and desire and longing independently, Like the person that is dying does not owe you that. I mean, it might sound harsh, but they are also going through their process and their journey. So yeah, I mean, I hope that doesn't sound too harsh, but it depends on the intention and the approach.
But also, I kind of think that is what it is. I think there's a lot of like having to like respect the wishes of the dying. That is hard. That is very challenging
Yeah.
for us when we think that we know better, but this is someone else's destiny that is at play here. And of course, we care. And I actually encountered a situation where I was helping a friend who was moving through this with a loved one, where until the end, her sister wouldn't admit to really anyone that she was dying. And that was a really difficult space and a line for her to toe, that this was not hers. Like I think there's a lot of work for us to recognize like what is ours and like what genuinely belongs to us and what is it that we're seeking to resolve in this moment with this person's death. Um, and I find for me, like engaging with curiosity, just more about the life of the person can also provide deeper insight that may provide some type of resolve also. So instead of like being persecuting and judging of like how someone should be handling things, lean into curiosity about maybe the resistance of why and where the existence is and of the resistance and why it exists there in the first place.
I also feel that, and I've seen it, where a lot of the healing happens after also. It can happen after death, and that takes a lot of effort and energy on the individual. But curiosity is definitely a good space to be in when that tension arises, and like recognizing the longing and desire within yourself. Yeah. I'm curious to hear about Caitlin's thoughts on this. I like this. This feels like a school question.
I think what comes to mind is like find a point of connection. We don't have to talk about the death or we don't have to talk about this, but it's like, let's find a point of connection first. And it's interesting you're asking this question because I'm thinking that this is going to be the process I have with my mom because she doesn't really like talking about death. And so even though I had a very unique and beautiful experience with my dad, who is a Scorpio, and he's very like oriented towards taboo and deathful things and the occult in a lot of ways. My mom hates that shit. She's like, fuck that, you know? And so I'm like, okay, so what's that going to be like? And I just think in what I've been learning with her is like, let's find a point of connection that's not to do with that topic. And eventually from that place of connection, there will be an opening at some point. Yep. It's unavoidable, but I don't believe in directing someone in a way that they don't want to go, right? Like, I think if you're doing that from a place of ego. And I think the right choice is like, okay, like, let's talk about your favorite movie, or what was your favorite part of the day, or like, tell me a story from this time of your life. Like, having genuine interest in where that other person is will only like lead to more opening.
And I wanted to piggyback off of that a little bit with the concept of like research and like family lineages, and that's how we keep the storytelling alive, and the story of and the connection of our ancestors together. I like to think as a doula, I'm like the record keeper for my family in a way. And like you said, the point of connection is the curiosity about the lives that these people have led. So I have a grandmother who's 92 years old and has been experiencing like a lot of health issues and, has come close a few times to dying. And I've kind of just taken it upon myself to start like making recordings of her in her own voice, in her own tone, and from her own memory of this experience. So I think it creates a more robust picture when we're creating things for when it is time for her to go, but also like the legacy that she is weaving currently for us as a family and for the future.
Love that. Some beautiful thoughts and insight. Okay, I've got another one for you. This one is more on like, it's like flipping the coin, where we have a a loved one who is dying, but they've like fully embraced it. They're open to it. They want to talk about it. They've been preparing for it. Like they have fully embraced that they are going to die. But the child in this relationship, like the child of this parent, it is having a very difficult time sitting with that idea. And so how do you feel like a person in that kind of situation could approach it in a way increases their capacity for integrating and deepening and healing in their relationship?
What a gift to have someone who is so ready and prepared and is like able to do that process. It sounds like if the person that's dying is prepared and ready, they're able to maybe hold some space for their child and do a little grief work and process with their child. Not that they are, that's such a gift. That's such a rare situation. I don't often see that, where if the patient is ready and willing and open, there's a lot of room for discussion. And I see it as like a space of wisdom, right? Like it seems like to get to that place, there's a lot of reflection and contemplation that they've already done. And like to sit with somebody in that space is so incredible. Like I would have so many questions of like, how did you get to that place? Like, what is emerging for you now? Like what is alive in your heart as you're approaching death? Like I would really love to be in that space. And again, it kind of circles back to curiosity and authenticity and like being present with meeting the person that's dying where they are, whether it's in a space of resistance or a space of just like, open presence.
Yeah, she articulated that so beautifully. I'm like, mic drop. Mic drop. Because like truly that is rare that occurs. But again, I think that's such a gift for any person to come to terms with acceptance in that way. Also that person for their like capacity, I think they also need to attend to their needs with curiosity, because what is this anxiety? Is it fear about their own mortality? Like they're being led to a new gate of opportunity of exploration with all of these uncomfortable feelings themselves. And here they have a resource that's available to them who could help them expand and refine those questions. So Janet, like, bravo. It's such a good, summation.
Caitlin, anything you would add?
I think so. I think it was just so well said. Who came to mind as the archetype of your description there was Ram Dass. And how people have described how Ram Dass felt at the end of his life, and being just really full of joy and ready. And to what Janet said, like, what a gift for that, to witness someone who's embracing the transition. Actually, what does come to mind is like after my dad died, I went on an artist retreat, and I was living alone in Greece, and I started just doodling random things in my journal, and I started doodling Grim Reapers, but I didn't like know how to do the face part, so I just filled in the face as like a galaxy of stars. And then later on, like months later, I woke up from a dream and I was like, that's called the Glam Reaper. And so now the Glam Reaper is the archetype of what you're describing, which is she embraces death. She helps us all embrace death. And instead of this kind of dark, sweeping figure that takes you away and you lose life, it's more of like, come with me, we're going to go on another adventure, So there's a positivity, a rebranding of this character. There were moments during my dad's passing where he was like, yep, I'm beginning to feel my transition now. Like would say things like that. And he had there was fear, for sure. There was fear. But there was also this like, I'm ready. I think what he had said was,
I'm getting ready for my transition. And my mom looks at him. She's like, well, you're still here. And it was just this very funny, like, he's very okay with, he's getting more and more okay with that. And then she's a little bit like, no, you're practically still here. So stop saying stuff like that, you know, and just these different ideas about, we don't know what's on the other side. And so why not assume that it's going to be beautiful, right? So I think it's, yeah, just looking at our assumptions about what it means to die. And my personal spiritual philosophy is like, we get to go on another adventure. So. What comes up for me, Caitlin, as you were speaking, is just that it's not a linear experience in your accepting of death, right? Like, we all take turns having like little windows or like fractions of like, I accept this, I know it's coming, and then resistance come back. And I've witnessed this, and I've experienced it in my own family, where when there is someone dying, you're doing that together. You're all taking turns, like feeling into what it's like to accept death and dying, and seeing and watching it approach. The patient's doing that too. The person that's dying is also having that kind of experience where they're like gently dipping their toe into the pond of acceptance of death approaching. And, you know, and the family member, the care team, they're all kind of doing the same thing. And so we're like doing this dance as we're all approaching death. And that's like kind of the image that came to mind when we were speaking, Caitlin. Because it's not like, okay, I'm done accepting death. Like, I know it's coming and I'm fully ready. Like, you know, I haven't seen that yet. And it's a very enlightened state of being. And perhaps I will witness that someday. But until then, it kind of goes like this a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
And
sense.
I love that. I love that the rebranding of death, the Glam Reaper. I'm going to lean into that also.
Yeah, I lean into that too, because befriending Lady Death is what I call it in this process. Like making a friend of her rather than an enemy. You know, I think being able to have her accompany me in these times, I think are really important because, again, we're navigating and walking through lots of grief and death. But I feel like a baby child that's leaning in with curiosity about these things. And I feel like she's like my counselor in a lot of these ways as we're stepping through these unknowns. So for me, that rebranding, maybe she's not Glam Reaper, maybe she will be now. She'll be cute. But it is like this like very maternal counselor type figure who's here with me as I'm taking baby steps to figure things out, right? Because again, I think even as I'm in this work, I still have moments like Janet is expressing of fear, and then there's moments of fearlessness that I also, so it fluctuates all the time. But looking at death as a counselor versus like an enemy, I think is so helpful in this.
Well, she's the night sky, you know? Like, we can look up and we can be afraid of the night sky, but why? Because it's so beautiful. Like,
it's like the womb, the void.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, there's something really exciting about that. And I'm not ready to go anywhere, but
yeah. I think it's important to make those declarations too. I'm like, I still got work to do here. Like
100,000%. I'm like, I want to be a little old lady.
Right.
I'll be a crazy old lady someday.
Yeah.
I feel like you kind of answered the next one I was going to give you, but I wonder if there are any other thoughts that you have around principles and practices that could help someone accept death, to like fully come to that place of acceptance without shutting themselves down.
I think it's just to remind us all that it's the most natural thing. That it's totally normal, natural. Anything that comes up, the fear is natural. Anything that you're experiencing, to remind yourself like it's all okay and it's all normal. And I think sometimes, like in my own experience with like fear or anxiety, once I tell myself like, oh, it's completely normal that I have this fear or that I have this anxiety, that normalization kind of makes the fear feel less intense.
suddenly. You know, it's like that acknowledgement, that validation, that part just needing that validation of like, I'm scared. But what feels more scary is the moment before you admit that to yourself, right? So I would say just helping if someone you're working with is struggling with that, just to be like, you know, what's feeling scary, you know, and finding the layer beneath the fear.
Yeah.
In my own process and training to become a doula, and in preparation for tending someone who's dying, I did a guided meditation, and it's a practice that I actually continue to utilize in my own process of cultivating presence. This guided meditation where I think about myself approaching death, not from a place of like romanticizing death or like from a place of like darkness, but really from a place of like, I've lived a very full life, and what would death look like as I approach it at the end of my life, a very old age, and all of the people I visualize, all of the people I love, and all of the things that I've cultivated, that I'm dreaming up in my life, that came to fruition, that I've manifested in this world. All of the meaningful interactions that I've had, all of the different belly laughs and joys and playful things that I've had in my life, you know, like I really lean into that and notice what comes up in me. And oftentimes it's a lot of, you know, I've encountered a lot of deep longings and desire. And that brings up a lot of curiosity. Like after living a full life, what more can I want? What are my longings and desire at that stage? And when I'm in that practice, I'm able to recognize within myself, like beyond the fear, what the fear is rooted in. And I come back to I come back to love, of just like feeling like my time to express love and be within love and joy is coming to an end. And that has been a very transformative part of my practice, like, or a transformative aspect of training as a doula, of visualizing my own death, really looking at what an ideal scenario would look like. I come out of that practice feeling inspired and motivated often to cultivate meaningful interactions right now, meaningful interactions today, encountering people that might just be an acquaintance in my community, and really showing up like fully in our interaction, even if it's just like running into them at the grocery store. It's really shifted my kind of approach to life when I contemplate death, when I meditate on death, when I visualize and think about living a full life and coming to the end. And that's been a really helpful practice in dissolving that death anxiety for me. Yeah.
I love that so much, Janet, about visualizing like the end of what an ideal death would look like. I think sometimes the bigness of that can be daunting and intimidating. Because like how do you quantify like a life, you know? And I think that's what at least for me, initiates a lot of anxiety, but I have found the death meditations to be very helpful of being in the end already, for sure. So thank you for sharing that practice. I took a training a while ago, and I think to help break down the bigness of like a life, there was a practice introduced to me that was about a death inventory that we can do also daily. So like I said, I feel like our life is just a bunch of mini dress rehearsals for the big death, the big sleep. So if we are recognizing how we die into ourselves every day, then that could make it more palatable. And so I need to return to this practice myself, but the daily death inventory is a good way of providing, okay, like what is alive in my life today? What is passing away? And I think having this clear written out example of the things of lists, those are always helpful to help me to visualize what is real, what is at the forefront. And so being able to admit to myself, like, this is what I'm afraid of, as Caitlin mentioned, um, I think the death inventory is helpful in making those declarations for you to then address. So now that you know what it is that you're afraid of leaving or passing away, what can you do now to address those issues moving forward? So I find the death inventory is an empowered way of moving forward, but being informed first by what it would feel like, the grief and the loss of having not fulfilled certain things.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels
I
really
imagine it
great
allows
to
for you to
me.
integrate grief.
It feels really great to me because I was just thinking about that we often treat death like this, like we do our bodies sometimes, where we put off paying attention to our health or paying attention to death or grief or loss until something really traumatic happens to it. And then we just kind of go into this beast mode of like, how do I deal with this? But I love that having the practice of something in between as like almost a training method of like taking care of your body in the meantime. You know, you don't have as much of a traumatic response perhaps if you can take care of yourself in the meantime in your relationship with grief. So I really like what you shared, and I was wondering just about what you all might have to offer on that, on the idea of practicing grief or loss in the meantime, you know, without having a death specifically.
I like what comes to mind is this question that happened that was presented in one of the classes I took last year called Sacred Purpose. And there was a journal practice, journaling from way later in your life and looking back. So what is the little old lady in me? What is she seeing? Where is she? And what has she lived? And I love thinking of that way of like, I'm going to think from the end and then work backwards, because there's so much that I can do today. And there's so much meaning and purpose I can build in my life. And it truly makes me recognize that every single day counts. In the sense of like every single day is a building block for like this beautiful life. And one of those visions I had in the journal practice was like, I'm on my porch in my rocking chair in living in a really beautiful place where there's a lot of land and gardens and multiple dwellings, and it's a retreat healing center. And what I've done throughout my life is cultivate healing spaces, artistic spaces, creative spaces, and connected with nature and beauty. And I'm doing that now. Like, I'm like, okay, so it's happening. I'm working towards that little lady. And when I had that meditation journal practice with her and the version of myself that is her in the future, it's like she's so satisfied.
Yeah.
She's so satisfied. She has it all. And I'm really happy to be becoming her through the actions I take today. I love that, Caitlin. I feel like what comes up is just like, from what you've shared, is that working backwards from the end to the present allows for me to see a clearer through line. Because sometimes it feels so daunting to like ask myself, what is the next step? In what direction do I take that next step? And it's hard to find that thread into purpose. And that practice that you just shared, it feels like we could just work backwards. Like, like imagine yourself at the end in that place and work backwards till now. And like, there's the through line. There it is, you know? And it allows for us to bring sacred purpose into our day to day.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Neville Goddard is actually, he's like a new thought leader, and that's literally what he calls it, is living in the end. And I was, I'm blown away, and I'm so glad that it's catching on about working backwards so that we can see the common thread. Because Caitlin, like you, I'm starting to see that my future dream person, my inner elder, like the things that I value, I can see them clearly. Like, I value community, that's showing up now. I value my spirituality, that's showing up now. What does that look in my daily practice? The food that I'm choosing to eat and the relationships I want to nourish, like, that's happening now. And like you said, I think there's a lot of things where I'm like, I have all this stuff that I want to do. And I always felt like there was a disconnect. Like, the distance seems so far. when you think of how you're living in your day-to-day life. But that dreaming of being in the end absolutely inextricably brings you closer to being like, it's almost like the timelines almost intersect and they interlap at the same time. So, yeah.
Well, this has been incredible. It's been rich. It's been deep. And I have so many questions left that we're not going to get to talk about. But just in bringing to a close, I wonder if each of you could just take a moment and share something that you feel like needs to be present in the space in bringing what we've done to a close.
I want to share a new practice that I made starting on my birthday. I just turned 33 at the end of July.
Yay.
And thank you. My practice for this next trip around the sun for me is to record one happy moment a day. And so I just have that in my notes, and sometimes I miss, but then I can go back in the calendar and remember, oh, what happened that day? And so I'm collecting all these happy moments, and I've been having a very hard month, as it turns out. But I am now orienting my mind towards noticing that there is joy every single day. There's joy in the breakfast that I got to make for my nephews this morning. There's joy, an encounter I had at the grocery store with a friendly person, and so to close in my in this space is just to offer that to the listener, that you record your happy moments, because they are a plenty, and you will notice them the more that you record them. You'll see, and it'll inspire a happy life.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
When I think about my work as an end of life doula, I often come back, and I come back to this place over and over again. That this work is not like morbid or dark. It's really about love and kindness. It's about practicing seeing the humanity and the spirit of every being I encounter. That's really what it's about for me. And that's shifted my life. It's been transformative to really operate through that lens. So yeah, love and kindness and being of service to humanity in that way.
I love that. I love that so much. That really resonates with me, especially the being in service to humanity part. And I think to add on to the love and kindness, I think connection is really something that has been this has been a season of finding the others. And I just want to express my gratitude to being in spaces like this with you all and my Death Doula collective of women who are forming and gathering around holding space for death in this way. The folks at the Threshold Choir and all of the people who are engaging in this soulful, purposeful work, they constantly are reminders to me that there is such a gift in being in connection and community with others and sharing the burdens and the joys of life together. There's so much more fulfillment and meaning and depth when you're able to share this with people who can go there with you, show you new things, and transport you into different worlds. So I feel deeply grateful for all of the people who've allowed me to be a part of their most intimate falling aparts and reconstruction processes, because truly they have transformed me from now until eternity.
We're really grateful for each of you being willing to be here with us today. There was one thing that came to mind just as we were talking about sacred purpose and those kinds of things that I wanted to just share. This is from Francis Weller as well. He says, bringing grief and death out of the shadow is our spiritual responsibility, our sacred duty. By so doing, we may be able to feel our desire for life once again and remember who we are, where we belong, and what is sacred. And I feel like the three of you together have really helped to embody that today. So we feel super grateful to be able to spend this time with you.
Thank you so much.
So just as we close, how could people find you, connect with you, reach out to you?
My website is caitlingemma.com, CAITLINJEMMA.com. And I'd also love folks to look up You're Going to Die, YG2D.com, and look at all their amazing work that they're doing.
Yay. This is Phoenix. I can be reached at cosmicplayground.com. So www.cosmicplayground.com or medicine we carry collective. So that's an email called medicinewecarry@gmail.com or medicinewecarry.com.
I could be reached at, I'm just going to give my email, at janetbmcdonnell@gmail.com, and it's JAINNEDBONNELL yeah, and I would love to hear from you all, or I'm happy to have folks reach out to the folks at Fertile Dark, and they could pass on my contact, and we'll share that with them also.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll make sure we put all of that in the show notes so people can find that. And
Thank you.
To all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us here for this beautiful episode on the Fertile Dark. Phoenix, Caitlin, and Janet have provided so much beautiful wisdom and amazing heartfelt sentiment throughout these 2 episodes, and I feel so grateful to have this opportunity to talk with them. And I hope that it provided some sort of connection with release or healing for you as well. I'm actually curious about how these 2 episodes landed for you and what's arising for you after hearing this. I know death can be a tough topic, but I appreciate you staying with us and being willing to look at death and look at grief and loss. Is there something else that you feel like you'd like to explore further? I invite you to contact us and let us know through email or social media. And also, I invite you to reach out to Janet, Caitlin, or Phoenix if something of their work called out to you. And until next time, I'd say keep delving deep and embracing the journey.